My name is Kristen, and for years, my brother David treated me like I was invisible, a lesser version of himself. He always had my parents wrapped around his finger, and when it came time to sell our childhood home, he didn't just ask me to leave, he kicked me out, claiming I was holding them back. He left me with nothing but a broken heart and a burning need to prove him wrong. What he didn't know was that while he was busy climbing the corporate ladder at Sterling Innovations, a company he believed was his ticket to the top, I was silently, relentlessly building my own empire. Soon, the very ground he thought he stood on would be mine. Their smug faces would drain of color, their confident smiles replaced by utter, speechless shock. They never saw it coming. If you've ever felt cast aside, underestimated, or had your worth dismissed by the people who should have championed you, hit that like button and let me know in the comments. You're not alone. Growing up in our quiet suburban home in Colorado, my life felt less like a childhood and more like a permanent audition for a role I could never quite land. That role, of course, was favorite child. David, my older brother, effortlessly occupied that spot. He was the golden boy, the one with the natural charm, the effortless academic success, and the athletic prowess that my parents, especially my father, openly adored. I, on the other hand, was the quiet, artistic one, more comfortable with a sketchbook and a good book than with the boisterous energy that seemed to follow David everywhere. I remember my 12th birthday, a day that perfectly encapsulates our family dynamic. All I'd wanted was a specific vintage camera I'd saved up for half the cost of, dreaming of capturing the world through my own lens. My parents, however, surprised me with a new set of sensible school clothes. Later that evening, David, who hadn't even had a birthday, received a top-of-the-line gaming system because, as my dad proudly declared, he aced his history test, and he deserves a reward. The sting wasn't just about the unequal gifts. It was the casual way my desires were dismissed, my passion unseen, while David's every whim was indulged. Family dinners were a constant performance. David's sports victories, his academic awards, his grand plans for the future. These were the main topics of conversation. My own achievements, like winning a regional art competition or getting into an advanced placement class, were met with a perfunctory, "That's nice, dear," before my mother would pivot, asking David about his upcoming football game. It felt like I was living in a shadow, yearning for a glimmer of their acknowledgement, a single word of genuine pride. This consistent emotional neglect fostered a deep sense of invisibility. I yearned for their approval, desperately wanting to be seen and valued. But with every dismissive comment, every forgotten achievement, that yearning slowly transformed into a quiet, simmering resolve. If they wouldn't see my worth, I would build it myself, brick by painstaking brick, until it was undeniable. The final shattering blow, the moment that solidified my resolve, came a few years after I graduated college. I was living at home, working a demanding entry-level job in digital marketing, saving every penny to one day move out. Our parents, influenced heavily by David, decided to sell the house to invest in one of David's supposedly guaranteed business ventures. I knew they needed the capital, but I assumed there would be a discussion, a plan for me. Instead, David called me one Tuesday afternoon. "So the house is officially listed," he announced, his voice clipped and impatient. "Mom and Dad are liquidating to invest in my new tech startup. You need to be out by the end of next month. You're just clutter now, Kristen. Time to grow up and get your own place." My breath hitched in my throat. Out. David, where am I supposed to go? I'm barely making ends meet with student loans, and rent here is insane. He actually chuckled. "That's your problem, isn't it? Figure it out. Or maybe find a husband who can take care of you, like Mom always said you should." He hung up before I could even find my voice. I stood there, the dead phone still in my hand, the silence of the empty house deafening. Tears streamed down my face, hot and stinging, but beneath the sorrow, something else ignited. A fierce, searing anger. It wasn't just about the house. It was the culmination of years of being unseen, unheard, and ultimately, discarded. That was the moment I stopped hoping for their love and started forging my own path, a path that would lead me far beyond anything they could ever imagine. My revenge, I decided, wouldn't be loud or destructive. It would be quiet, strategic, and utterly undeniable. Being unceremoniously kicked out of my childhood home felt like being pushed off a cliff, but it also forced me to spread wings I didn't know I had. I landed, bruised but determined, in a tiny, overpriced studio apartment in Denver, taking on every freelance marketing gig I could find. Nights were spent working, days were a blur of meetings, and sleep became a luxury I rarely afforded myself. There were moments of crushing doubt, lonely nights where I questioned everything. But then I'd remember David's condescending tone, my parents' cold dismissal, and that memory would fuel me, pushing me forward. My passion for digital marketing deepened during this period. I immersed myself in every aspect of the field: analytics, content creation, SEO, social media strategy. I wasn't just doing a job, I was building an expertise, a skill set that was becoming increasingly valuable. I devoured online courses, attended virtual conferences, and spent countless hours experimenting with new strategies. I was driven by an insatiable hunger to prove my worth, not to them, but to myself. It was during a grueling 18-hour work session, fueled by cheap coffee, that I met Sarah Chen, a brilliant and no-nonsense venture capitalist who was a guest lecturer at an online summit. I dared to ask a pointed question about market trends that caught her attention. After the session, she reached out, intrigued. Sarah became my first true mentor, seeing the raw talent and relentless drive beneath my exhaustion. She didn't just offer advice, she opened doors, connecting me with her network, challenging me to think bigger, and most importantly, validating my intelligence and potential in a way my family never had. Through Sarah, I also met Marcus Thorne, a seasoned tech entrepreneur who became an invaluable ally and, eventually, a business partner. Marcus believed in my vision for a disruptive digital marketing agency, Ascend Digital. He provided the strategic guidance and initial seed funding that allowed me to transition from freelance gigs to building my own company. Sarah and Marcus became my chosen family. They celebrated my wins, offered tough love when I stumbled, and provided the unconditional support and recognition that my blood relatives had always withheld. They saw me, not just a shadow of my brother. As Ascend Digital grew, I poured every ounce of my energy into it. We started small, just me and a handful of dedicated remote contractors, working out of my cramped apartment. But our innovative strategies and relentless client focus quickly gained traction. We began landing bigger clients, expanding our team, and moving into a legitimate office space. My bank account, once a source of constant anxiety, was steadily growing. All this time, my family remained blissfully unaware, or perhaps, willfully ignorant. When I occasionally spoke to my mother, she'd ask if I'd found a proper job yet, or inquire if I was dating anyone serious to settle down. David, whenever our paths crossed at infrequent family gatherings, would still condescendingly ask about my little hobby, or subtly brag about his own progress at Sterling Innovations, the prestigious tech firm where he'd been for years. "Still tinkering with those websites, Kristen?" he'd say with a smirk at Thanksgiving, oblivious to the fact that my tinkering was generating revenue that dwarfed his salary. "I'm on the fast track for a VP position at Sterling. Big things happening." My parents would beam, never asking about my work, never inquiring about Ascend Digital. Their disinterest was a constant, dull ache, but it also fueled my quiet determination. I knew David's ambition was solely focused on Sterling Innovations. He talked about it constantly, how it was the gold standard in the industry, his destiny. Little did he know, my own plans were taking shape, and they involved his precious destiny. I wasn't just building a successful company. I was building the foundation for a revelation that would rock their world to its core. The idea, audacious as it was, began as a flicker. Sterling Innovations, for all its prestige, had some underlying vulnerabilities, some outdated systems, a reliance on legacy technology that I, from my vantage point in a fast-paced digital world, could see clearly. As Ascend Digital's capital grew, and as I refined my skills in strategic acquisitions through market analysis, that flicker grew into a burning plan. I started quietly investing, buying up small, seemingly insignificant blocks of Sterling Innovation shares. Nobody noticed. Why would they? I was just Kristen, the one David kicked out. They never suspected that Kristen was about to buy the whole damn company. The annual Sterling Innovations Charity Gala was a highlight on Denver's tech social calendar. It was a black-tie event, glittering with the city's elite, and David had practically gloated for months about how this was his night. He was convinced he'd be officially named the new vice president of operations, a promotion he'd been campaigning for relentlessly. My parents, of course, were there as his proud guests, their eyes gleaming with the reflected glory of their golden sun. I received an invitation myself, a surprising courtesy extended to major shareholders, though my family certainly didn't know I was one of them. I arrived discreetly, dressed elegantly but blending into the crowd, watching the spectacle unfold. David was holding court near the main stage, a smug smile plastered on his face, occasionally gesturing towards my parents who nodded along, radiating parental pride. He spotted me across the room, and his smile tightened. He made his way over, glass of champagne in hand, his voice dripping with feigned concern. "Kristen. Wow, you actually made it," he said, looking me up and down. "Nice dress. Still doing your little freelance thing? You know, Sterling is looking for administrative assistants if you're serious about a real career." He chuckled, and my parents, who had followed him, offered tight, pitying smiles. My mother added, "It's so lovely of David to always look out for you, dear. He's always been so protective." I felt a cold calm settle over me. "It's good to see you all too," I replied, my voice even. "Enjoying the evening?" Just then, the CEO of Sterling Innovations, Mr. Harrison Vance, a stern but fair man I'd been negotiating with for months, stepped onto the stage. The murmurs in the ballroom hushed. David puffed out his chest, adjusting his tie, practically vibrating with anticipation. My parents leaned forward, ready for their son's moment. "Good evening, everyone." Mr. Vance's booming voice filled the hall. "Tonight, we celebrate not just our achievements, but the future of Sterling Innovations. As many of you know, there have been some significant shifts within our organization. Effective immediately, Sterling Innovations will be undergoing a complete restructuring." A ripple of confused whispers went through the crowd. David's confident smile faltered slightly. Mr. Vance continued, "This strategic move comes after months of meticulous planning and due diligence. I'm incredibly proud to announce that Sterling Innovations has been acquired, in its entirety, by Ascend Digital." A collective gasp swept through the room. My parents' mouths fell open. David's eyes, fixed on the stage, widened in disbelief. He looked like he'd been punched. Then Mr. Vance paused, his gaze sweeping the room before landing directly on me. "And as part of this monumental transition," he announced, his voice ringing with authority, "I'd like to introduce the new majority shareholder and the new CEO of Sterling Innovations, Ms. Kristen Davies." The spotlight, which had been on Mr. Vance, swung to me. A hush, thick with shock, fell over the room. David's face drained of all color, turning a ghastly white. His champagne flute slipped from his trembling fingers, shattering on the polished floor with a sharp crack that echoed in the sudden silence. My mother let out a small, strangled sound, her hand flying to her mouth. My father just stared, his jaw slack. I walked purposefully towards the stage, every step feeling like a triumph. As I passed David, whose eyes were wide with a mixture of horror and confusion, he stammered, "K. Kristen? You. Ascend. Digital." He looked utterly broken. I met his gaze, a quiet fire in my eyes. "That's right, David. The little hobby. Just bought your destiny." I ascended the stage, took the microphone from Mr. Vance, and turned to face the stunned crowd. "Good evening, everyone. As the new CEO of Sterling Innovations, I want to assure you all that this acquisition marks a new era of growth and innovation. We will be prioritizing strategic digital transformation and fostering a culture of true meritocracy." My gaze flickered to my brother, who was now being led away by a concerned colleague. His shoulders slumped in utter defeat. The room buzzed, not with confusion, but with a palpable sense of awe and curiosity. Several prominent business figures, some of whom I'd secretly consulted with during the acquisition, nodded approvingly, their respect evident. The validation was immense, undeniable. The air crackled with the shock of the reveal, and the delicious taste of vindication. The immediate aftermath of the gala was a blur of flashing cameras, congratulatory handshakes, and hushed conversations about the unexpected takeover. My family, however, was a different story. David disappeared quickly, escaping the public humiliation. My parents, looking utterly bewildered, eventually found me. "Kristen, what was that?" my mother stammered, her voice thin. "You bought Sterling? But you were just doing marketing." My father, usually so stoic, actually looked flustered. "Why didn't you tell us?" David was expecting that promotion. I met their eyes, no longer feeling the desperate need for their approval, only a quiet resolve. "You never asked, Mom. And Dad, David's career choices are his own. My focus has been on building my company, not on his promotions." I drew a clear boundary. There were no tears, no yelling, just a calm, firm statement of fact. They tried to recover, offering weak excuses about how busy they'd been, how they just assumed I was doing fine. I simply nodded, knowing their assumptions had been their undoing. There was no begging for money, not yet, but the shift in their demeanor was undeniable. The power dynamics had irrevocably changed. In the weeks and months that followed, the ripple effects spread throughout the wider family. Some distant relatives, who had always kept their distance or treated me with mild condescension, suddenly reached out, full of effusive praise and invitations. I responded politely, but carefully. The bonds that were based on genuine affection and respect were strengthened, while those built on conditional approval or exploitation quietly dissolved. I made it clear to my parents that while I wasn't severing ties completely, the nature of our relationship had fundamentally changed. Their previous access to my life, and any potential financial leverage they imagined, was gone. Sterling Innovations, under my leadership, began a rapid, transformative phase. We implemented aggressive digital strategies, streamlined operations, and fostered a culture that valued innovation and merit over nepotism. The company thrived, exceeding projections and silencing any skeptics who doubted my capability. New opportunities poured in, from speaking engagements to board positions, all directly stemming from the bold move at the gala. My life flourished, not just professionally, but personally. My relationship with Sarah and Marcus deepened. They truly were the family I chose. They saw my struggle, believed in my vision, and celebrated my triumphs with genuine joy. I found a sense of peace that had always eluded me. The constant yearning for my parents' validation was gone, replaced by a deep, internal wellspring of self-worth. I was free. Free from the need to prove myself, free from their judgment, free to build a life on my own terms. The revenge wasn't about their suffering. It was about my liberation. My journey taught me a profound truth. Your worth is not defined by others, especially not by those who refuse to see it. The pain of betrayal, of being cast aside, can be a crucible that refines you, hardening your resolve and sharpening your focus. It forces you to turn inward, to find your own strength, and to build your own purpose. My story isn't just about buying a company. It's about buying back my own self-respect and proving to myself that I was capable of so much more than anyone, including my own family, ever imagined. To anyone out there feeling invisible, overlooked, or betrayed, remember this. Your power lies in your resilience, your ability to transform your pain into unparalleled purpose. Build your own path, find your own chosen family, and never let anyone dim your light. Boundaries are not cruel. They are necessary acts of self-preservation. Share your own story of overcoming adversity in the comments below. What did you do when someone tried to define your worth? Like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share this video with someone who needs to hear that they are enough, just as they are.